Namaskar. Welcome to the ILETS webinar, ILETS Dialogues, which we are doing in this period of Corona. And the aim of this dialogue is to create positivity, create awareness about some of the good work which is happening around us. We are engaging with our uh, people from the health sector, the education sector, the transportation sector, water sector, and several other sectors, and also the officials from the government sector, that how are they helping in these times of Corona. And today we have an officer, Dr. Megha Bhargav. She is an IRS officer, and she is a Deputy Commissioner Income Tax in Mumbai. She is a part of the Ministry of Finance, Government of India. And I welcome Dr. Megha for joining us here. Megha ji, namaskar. Thank you for joining.
Thank you, Dr. Ravi. Namaste. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you. And many of the audience know about you, and many are not aware about your work. And the aim of this platform is to create much more awareness, and so that many other people can get inspired by your work, and in fact replicate what you are doing in Mumbai to other states and other parts of the country. So before we get into that, Dr. Megha, it would be interesting for our audience to know about a bit about your schooling and your higher education and your career till date, so that the audience has a context about your background. Yeah.
Okay. So I belong to Rajasthan. I'm from a city called Kota in Rajasthan. I've done my schooling from Sophia School, Kota. Thereafter, I have done my graduation from Government Dental College, Bombay. So I was here for 5 years. I completed my BDS. I went back to Kota, and then I worked for 4 years. I was practicing as a dentist, firstly at a private clinic, and then at ECHS Polyclinic, which is Ex-Servicemen Contributory Health Scheme. That is a flagship program of the Ministry of Defense. So basically, it's about providing health services to the armed forces, veterans, and their dependents. So I worked there as a dentist for 2 years, and I was preparing simultaneously for civil services exams as well. Then I appeared for my civil services exam. The first one was in 2009, whereby I got selected and I got into Indian Defense Estate Services. It was a short stint there. I worked there for a year, and I was posted as Chief Executive Officer in Nainital Almora Cantonment. I wrote the exam again, and then I was allotted the Indian Revenue Service, income tax, and then I joined income tax. So this is the professional part, what we have been doing, and then I came to Bombay on my first posting, and it's been 5 years since I've been working here.
Fantastic. So
yeah,
Kota to Mumbai, this has been a long journey for you. Let me ask you about that. In these times of COVID crisis, the Corona crisis, you have been taking initiatives to help the poor. And if you can talk about how you got inspired to take up these activities, and because every government official has its, like as an IRS officer, you have your own job and your own set of duties. So finding time besides the work, and you took up this job of helping the poor, helping the migrant workers. So how you got inspired, and how, what all actions you were able to take in this regard, Dr. Megha?
Okay, I just missed the video link for some time. I believe you're asking about the COVID-19 initiatives from what I could understand before the video snap. Okay, so all right. So Samarpan, so basically whatever COVID relief initiatives what we undertook as a group of people here, I would tell you from the starting, because we did it under the umbrella of our NGO, which is Samarpan. The organization had already been working before in the area of social welfare. And when COVID came before the lockdown, in fact, when it started spreading in India, we kind of repurposed ourselves and realigned our goals as far as the organization is concerned, because initially, primarily, what we were working was in the field of universal primary education and public health. So we kind of remodified us because the need of the hour was to provide relief to the people over here and somehow spread awareness on the disease. So in fact, before the lockdown started, we started working here. My batchmate is posted here. My sister, whose brainchild is the organization, Dr. Ruma. So all of us got together, and before the lockdown started, we distributed hand sanitizers and face masks to people around, especially the people in Mumbai who were traveling by local transport. So we started with this, and then the lockdown was declared, and we realized that it was all over the news that the migrant workers and the daily wagers had suddenly lost their sources of livelihood. So we sat together, and there was a group of around 50 IRS officers across India. We deliberated upon how to provide relief to these people, and we decided to provide them with food and sanitation kits. That's how the idea was born of helping out these people with ration for which would last them for a month till situations could stabilize. That was in the beginning. And we slowly gathered all our batchmates and seniors across India, and we gave these food and sanitation kits in 7 cities of Bombay, of India, including Mumbai, Delhi, Anand, Jodhpur, Latur. And after doing this bit, we almost reached to a figure of providing 28,000 food kits and around 5.5 lakh cooked meals. Cooked meals we gave to the people who were homeless and who were not having a kitchen. So the dry ration wouldn't be helpful, but yes, these could be beneficial to them. At the same time, since personal hygiene is so important in this, we also gave a sanitation kit to these people comprising of a hand sanitizer, face mask, and soaps, so that it could cater to their needs. Now what we have started, this is a recent campaign, what we've done is in the menstrual hygiene space, because we realized that since the sources of livelihood had come to a screeching halt, so it's the health of the person, and especially the women health, which takes a backseat in these times. And in fact, when we were distributing the food kits, there were many women in these families who came up with this issue. So we started distribution of biodegradable sanitary napkins. So on the one hand, we were catering to the menstrual hygiene requirements of these women. And secondly, also spreading a message on environmental friendliness, because I think that is very, very important that we don't solve one problem by creating another one. So this is right now what we are working upon.
Amazing, amazing. Very interesting. And tell us that in these times when there is a lockdown, and like recently the lockdowns have been eased a bit, but earlier, like the lockdown was very strict, the movement was restricted for everyone. So going out with the kids to the poor by your NGO members wouldn't have been easy, like getting the relevant passes, public transportation not there, restrictions are around. So how did your NGO handle these issues?
So these were actually the big handicaps, because on the one hand, we wanted to reach out to people, and secondly, there were these physical movement restrictions, be it the human movement or be it the movement of the goods, what we were going to give it to the needy. So at this time, I'm very, very grateful to Mumbai Police and the BMC for helping us out in this, because they were the ones who identified these beneficiaries and also helped us in distribution of dry ration as well as kits as well as cooked meals. Also, we tied up with few local NGOs on the ground. For example, we tied up with Robin Hood Army, we tied up with Khana Chahiye, Annapurna Movement. So basically, it was a joint effort by so many NGOs, including ours, as well as the police and the administration. So it was kind of multiple stakeholders and multiple people coming together. And then that synergism was established so that what we had thought of was implemented finally on the ground, which with such amazing numbers we could achieve in the end.
Give us some idea about the numbers, like a number of people you were able to reach through your network of NGOs in this situation.
Okay.
If you can talk about
so as I said, so we covered around, so the food kits, what I was talking about, we reached to almost 28,100 would be the exact figure if I tell you. So 28,100 food kits were distributed. Apart from that, 5.5 lakh of cooked meals. Then we gave these sanitation kits. They would be the same what we were giving with the food kits. Apart from that, we also provided these sanitation kits to the essential service providers, those who are working at the front line. For example, the police, the sanitation workers, the BMC workers, who had no choice but to be on the ground and do this extraordinary duty in these extraordinary times. So we also gave around 16,000 face masks and sanitizers to the frontline workers in Bombay specifically, and otherwise in Bangalore, in Anand, Gujarat, and Jodhpur and Latur as well. So these were broadly the pictures what we've covered. As far as the sanitary pads include, we have till now distributed around 10,000 pads, and since it's the campaign what we've recently launched, our target is to reach 1 lakh such underprivileged women in Bombay. Also, since the migrant workers have now started going home because of the Shramik trains, they have been made operational. So again, maintaining hygiene trains becomes very important. So till now we have catered to 4 trains where we have provided these sanitation kits to the migrant workers as well. And we'll be doing it till the time the Shramik trains are running.
Excellent. We are all aware that the crisis is huge, and the numbers you have mentioned, although are big, but the overall requirement of the help is much bigger. So are there any cases of you have seen other NGOs or other people getting inspired by the work of your NGO, and they are willing to help, and people have offered more funding and support to this initiative of you and your NGO?
Yes, tremendously. We have just been overwhelmed by the kindness and support what we have received in this period. We were truly amazed by so many people joining us. From our IRS services, I said, so many officers joined us. Then there were people from other sectors, my medical dental friends, they came. Strangers came up to us after seeing our work that they want to help us. So it was amazing to see this immense support, and honestly, we couldn't have done it without this support. It was a collective effort of so many people coming together. And also, as I mentioned before, also the relationship what we developed with the police and the BMC, their support to us in these crucial times, it was very important, as well as the other NGOs also who provided us with the required ground support.
And can you tell us about any of the human stories which you came across where your team reached out to people, like the stories of the people who are in distress at this time, and your team reached out to them, and the kind of feedback you got from the people your team was helping too? So if you have any incidents or any stories to tell us, if you can.
Yes, there have been innumerable stories, very emotional ones at times, that we couldn't even, sitting at home in lockdown, we didn't even have an iota of the suffering what the people were facing. So I remember in the initial days when we were planning how to go about it and how to distribute the rations, we received a request from around 22 laborers and migrant workers from Bihar in South Bombay area only. And they were living on biscuits for last 3 days as soon as the lockdown. This was just within 2 or 3 days of the lockdown. And we got this request that we can't eat the biscuits anymore. And we were surprised at how can anybody survive on biscuits for 3 days. And they were a group of 22 people, including women and children. So that time, since it was an initial stage for us also of planning the entire thing, so for the first 2 days, we tried to arrange cooked meals for them. Then we procured ration and gave it to them. Then there was another story in Dharavi. As you know, Dharavi is the biggest slum of Bombay, and it was an area where maximum cases were being reported. So one of the team members, Karthik, he got a call and he was told that these people, again, they were not having any food. Whatever savings they had the savings were consumed by buying ration, and now everything was gone. And the only phone this person had, even that he had to sell. And the other phone, and when we reached out to him, he couldn't call back because the screen of the old phone was broken. So it was just very sad. We felt very sad and helpless about the whole situation, that whatever possessions these people had, they had to just sell it out. Okay, so then again, we reached out to them with the help of Dharavi police. Then I remember one again very, very emotional story of a woman. I got a call from somebody that she had given birth to a child. She was admitted in a private hospital. And there, when she was tested as COVID positive, she was just turned off from the hospital that, we don't have any beds for COVID patients. And that female with her 2 days old child, she was just left there by the hospital in front of the Dharavi slums, and they couldn't find any bed because actually at that time there were no beds. So imagine a woman and her husband was stranded somewhere in Tamil Nadu, and she was here with her newborn baby. So when we reached out to her, we made sure we spoke to the BMC people and the police, also the Dharavi police, and everybody was very prompt in initiating the action. And the very same day, she was admitted to one of the hospitals. But it just brought a kind of sadness to us, but at the same time, some satisfaction that we were able to save a life that day. So there have been so many, like innumerable stories like this. It just talks about human suffering, but also it talks about the fact that we as humans, we were able to help them out. So it just speaks the kindness of the in society that everybody again, they came together and they saved human lives.
Sure. Amazing. Very touching stories you are talking about, and just shows that how important is your initiative and any initiative of your network of people who are helping in this situation. I'm interested to talk know more about the network of NGOs. Like you have mentioned that several NGOs have come to support this work. So if you can describe that, which are these organizations and how are they helping, and how what are their challenges and how are they dealing with it? Yeah.
Okay. So there are numerous organizations. I mean, civil society, today only I just published an article and where I say this is a transformed role of a civil society in these unprecedented times, where so many organizations which had been working in silos in different areas, they have actually come together. For example, I like to tell you from the way we have collaborated with several organizations. There is Robin Hood Army. They gave us immense ground support on whenever in the distribution. Then there is a group called Live to Give, where we have such amazing individuals that we just put in a request when we lack funds. There are people who are collaborating, who are chipping in for maybe one or two families. Then there is an organization, there's a citizen collective called Khana Chahiye, with whom we have collaborated for the trains which are going, for the Shramik trains. So they are providing food and we are providing the sanitation kits to the people. Then FICCI Flow came on board. FICCI Flow donated us around 10,000 sanitary pads to be given to the underprivileged women in Mumbai. There was an organization called Anubhuti Foundation, which works in Ambernath, Kalyan, which are like far-flung areas of Bombay, the outskirts of Bombay. So they were initially working in those areas. They help us in identifying the needy people. And then we went ahead and distributed the kits to them. So I think the advantage of this interlinked civil society is tremendous, because if you're working in silos, there are certain organizations, for example, Anubhuti, who didn't have funds, but we had funds. But we lack the ground information on that area where they have been working for like years. So there was this exchange of data, of resources, and that's how we were able to reach out to so many people with our resources and our experience. So what is the need of the hour is, you're asking about the challenges. Yes, we were facing challenges because we have done this thing for last 2 months. Even we are drying up of funds now. We are raising new campaigns, fundraising campaigns. So funding is going to be a big challenge for all the NGOs now, because the economy is going a downturn and we don't see businesses getting back to their shape. So CSR funding and other fundings might dry up. So funding is definitely going to be a challenge. How to overcome these challenges, as I said, to prioritize our way of functioning. This is what we have thought about. And also repurpose our organization in terms of the work, what we have been doing. I think that will be very, very important in the coming times.
Sure. And if you also explain about the this crisis is going on and it's not going to go away soon. So at least 3 months, 6 months, this distress because of COVID may remain. Mm-hmm. So how you plan to organize your work in a better way or institutionalize it so that the like it is like it can scale up more, like it is able to reach out to a larger number of people, and it becomes a like it more citizens are able to participate in it, they are able to donate to it, and they may like even sponsor a family or sponsor food for someone, sponsor education for someone. So perhaps right now it's more of a word to like the word of mouth exercise. So are you like looking at making it a more organized ecosystem where there is a website and people are able to donate, and so that more citizens are able to participate and contribute in this noble effort?
Already have a website. As I said, this is not, so this is not an initiative which just came by COVID. Samarpan is not born out of COVID. It was existing before that. And as I said in the beginning of the webinar, we repurposed ourselves in the times of COVID. So yes, we have a dedicated site. We have dedicated CSR funding, what we've been receiving for last 4 years. And the same had been used for our inclusive education and primary healthcare programs in 3 states where we have been doing it. So that is there. Word of mouth did help us, but we also had the 3 campaigns running on different platforms. We had one fundraising on Keto, we had one on Milap, and now we've started on Efforts for Good. So these are all crowd funding platforms where we have initiated campaigns. So the people who know us, the people who don't know us, but they appreciate the work what we are doing, we have received anonymous donations from these, like the people whom we don't know, but they were just inspired and they were happy to help because of the work what we were doing. So we have these systems in place, and we want to continue this and also approach the government for grants and the corporates for CSR funding, so that this thing shouldn't end. This has to be a sustainable impact, because as you said, the effect of this won't stop now. It will be far-reaching, especially in terms of these 2 verticals where we have been working, education and health, because these are the ones which are neglected first. I mean, if person is not having money, so he will buy food, and rest all of the other things will come low on priority. So these things suffer. That was the reason why we started with the menstrual hygiene project. And also, once the lockdown opens and gradually when things start coming to normal, we would like to go back to our earlier initiatives of inclusive education and primary healthcare, so that they don't suffer because of the pandemic. So this is how we have thought about.
Excellent. That good to know that you are anyway raising funds through the crowdsourcing platforms, and citizens are like participating and contributing in this cause, right? So is your work limited to any specific city or any state, or you are looking at any focused states or cities? If you can talk about that.
Okay, so as far as COVID is concerned, I mentioned before, we have worked in 7 cities of India, primarily in Mumbai and Bangalore. And apart from that, what we have been working since the inception of the organization was majorly in 3 states, Rajasthan, Uttarakhand and Maharashtra, where we have adopted 41 schools and impacted the lives of around 10,500 children. So these are our areas of functioning. And when I say education and healthcare, we basically go into the rural and tribal areas of these 3 states. So this is what has been our geographical distribution of work.
Sure. And if you can also mention that since COVID is both a health and an economic pandemic, and you have worked in the health sector before joining the government services, and you are right now working in the economic sector, in the IRS.
Yeah.
So how does your exposure to these 2 sectors help you in this work which you are doing?
In COVID specifically, you are saying, or in the in COVID specific? I think in COVID, the major, we could understand the gravity of the situation in the earlier phase, primarily because of being in health sector, because you understand the conditions of the abysmal conditions of health at times in the remote areas where we have been working on. So we knew that these were the people who were to be impacted, especially in remote areas. Yes, they were going to be impacted economically, but in the urban congested areas like Dharavi, we had done few programs earlier as well, and that is when we realized that these people have to be reached out in terms of personal hygiene, because you have slums in Bombay where there are no good sanitation facilities. They have shared bathing facilities. There are no what we call water sanitation and hygiene. That is not maintained properly. So being a health professional, you understand the importance of these. And that's the reason why we started our relief initiative before the lockdown, when we started distributing sanitizers and face masks, as I said, because compulsory use of face masks became a mandatory thing from now. But we were encouraging people to use this even before the lockdown started. That was because we understand the nitty-gritties of health. So I think these little things, they really matter from the experience. And as far as the economic services goes, the IRS service, I think IRS was very, very helpful in designing the whole campaign. So many officers supported us in the entire campaign. I think that was tremendous. So that's how both
to help you, like help organize all this active information technology? You use websites, you use portals, apps, anything? Yeah.
As I said, we have our presence on the social media as well. And social media is a big influencer. It depends upon us how to make the right use of it. And this time also, we showcased our work on social media. And as I said, these other NGOs also whom we collaborated, many of them came on board to help us just because of this power of social media, which we use to spread the word around us. So that was very, very important. I think information technology in these times, if it spreads a good word, there is no better use to it.
So it will be great if you can write the website of the NGO and where people could also donate on the chat.
Yeah.
So like
Okay.
some of the people have asked it. So if you can go on the chat option, if you can mention, it will be nice.
Yes, I can see it. One second.
Look at the chat option in the bottom.
Yeah, I can see that. That's our website.
Yes.
Okay. And that's the website. And we also have a campaign on efforts for good. If I don't have the link of it right now, maybe I can share it on your platform, or one of my team members, I will request them to please share the same.
Sure.
And I'm sure they'll share it.
Sure. And if there's like an email ID, like people are asking, like if they are interested.
Yes.
You can give an email ID so then people can contact you.
Yeah. And one of my team members would be sharing the efforts for good, the fundraising campaign of ours. They'll be just sharing this link, so you can just go through it.
And as you mentioned in the beginning, that Samarpan has existed before the COVID happened, and it was anyway working in this field of the health and education. So if you can talk about pre-COVID work of Samarpan, how it started, what was the objective, and how you got with it. Yeah.
Okay. So Samarpan is the brainchild of my sister. She's Dr. Ruma Bhargav. She's a doctor turned into a public health professional and now working in the Red Cross. So I remember a conversation what we were having in 2016 when both of us, ex-doctors and now in our respective stimulating jobs, we think that there is somehow still something which is lacking, and we need to connect to the people on the ground and then deliver solutions, because we had our experiences, yet we had these alarming numbers in front of us, where it said that around 23 million girls, they drop out of school once they attain puberty, or 70 out of 100 children in India, they don't complete their schooling, or 1.5 lakh schools in India lack clean drinking water. So these figures were very, very alarming to us, and we thought that we have to do something about it. And that's how this idea of having an organization of ours germinated. We got many like-minded individuals from our medical fraternity, from our service, and then we designed a program to reach out to the rural and tribal areas in 3 states. Rajasthan primarily because we belong to Rajasthan, so we know the problems over there. We can develop solutions which are customized to the local needs there. Maharashtra because yes, I'm posted, and also Uttarakhand where I had worked earlier in my defense services. So these are the 3 states what we selected, and then we got down to the ground. We visited these schools, asked the principals, teachers, students, and parents about their requirements in the schools, because sitting in the cities, we cannot even fathom the requirements of these kids who were in villages which were, although in the periphery of the urban areas, but still they were very, very remotely linked to these basic necessities of education. So as far as the education part goes, we designed Adhyan Kits for them. In each Adhyan Kit, we try to include the study materials which were catered to a child's education need for a year. Because what we noticed was that when we were going to these schools, children were given textbooks, but there were no stationery, there was no school bags. Children had just one set of uniform, and they would just not wash it, and then it would lead to hygiene problems, it would lead to absenteeism. So all these things were interrelated. The education, health, deprivation, poverty, all these things were interrelated. So we thought that we should start from these very, very basic things of enabling the child to come to the school initially, how to change the learning experience of a child in the remotest corner of a country. So hence we designed these Adhyan Kits, and we have impacted, I think I've already mentioned that, 41 schools what we've adopted. We have done this program in these schools. Then we also installed water purifiers because the quality of water was really bad in these schools, especially in a place like Rajasthan, from where I belong, where the condition of fluorosis is endemic. So we partnered with Borolene. Under the Borolene CSR program, we installed water purifiers in these schools. Then we also conducted health camps, as I said, and being from medical background, we knew that it shouldn't stop at being a diagnostic health camp, but it had to be a curative one as well. So we primarily dealt with the primary health care, examining the nutritional deficiencies, eye disorders, dental disorders, and then we also provided treatment as soon as it was there, the skin infections which were so rampant. So this is how, these were the 2 verticals around which our entire program, what we call Shiksha Pravah, was designed. So this is the way we've been working in these areas.
Very interesting, and kudos to your sister, Dr. Ruma Bhargav, to have started this NGO.
Yeah.
You mentioned. So hats off to her. Yeah. And let me ask you that your NGO has been working in 3 states, as you mentioned, Uttarakhand, Rajasthan, and of course Mumbai. So how are the problems and the challenges similar and different in these 3 different geographical locations? I think all have different geographical or socio-economic challenges and health challenges.
Mm-hmm.
So problems somewhat similar and somewhat different. If you can talk about that.
Yeah. So as I said, I think what we have noticed was that the condition of the students in Rajasthan, the places where we visited, that is around Kota. Kota is my district. So it's around half an hour drive from Kota, all these villages around 25 to 30 kilometers. There, the condition of the schools was not that great. I think the major problem was because they were in Mukundra Hill Tiger Reserve is one national park over there. So there were schools there, and since these schools were within that reserve, within the Tiger Reserve, they were at the crossroads of development as well as environmental conservation. So there were villages which were not electrified. So how do you actually get kids to school, especially weather conditions are so extreme in Rajasthan. And when I speak about weather conditions as well as the endemic problems of Rajasthan, I mentioned before, fluorosis was one thing what we addressed to. That was one big challenge which we didn't find in any of the other states, but in Rajasthan. So we addressed to that while installing water purifiers. As far as the non-electrified villages, as I mentioned, there was a village of Kolipura where we went, and we gave around 65 solar lanterns to these families which had never seen light over there, because the forest department never allows development activities that being in a tiger reserve area. So these are the kind of specific problems what we encountered there. Uttarakhand, we never had a problem of clean water as such. There were few pockets in Almora district which had these problems, but there we also noticed that very few people are still studying in government schools. Most of them have shifted to the private ones, but then those few, they are not getting the basic necessities. So there we came up with the idea of providing Adhyan kits and also woolen clothes, because it's perennially cold over there. So we gave them woolen clothes over there. In Maharashtra, where we went, we primarily work in an area called Dahanu, which is a very, very, again, a remote area. There, the awareness of menstrual hygiene was one problem. What we found was lacking in the schools where we function over here, schools and colleges of the adolescents. So there we started menstrual hygiene awareness programs. So different programs have been done in different areas. And I said we always make sure that the teachers and the principals are taken on board, and also the parents and the students, so that the primary requirements are given by them, that this is what is lacking in their schools. So these are peculiar problems which we found in all these 3 states.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Just shows that how diverse are our problems, how diverse are different country, and they have diverse challenges. And you have talked about this initiative, this of Samarpan, and hats off to it. But as you would have found out by running an NGO, that running an NGO is not an easy job. Like people, not all people are inspired to help out. Like getting grants is not easy. There is a bit of people also, like some people also don't trust NGOs. They think that they are not doing a good job and stuff like that. So how do you deal with these challenges? Like, you have a great objective in your heart and in your mind that you are trying to help people, but not necessarily there is always support. Like you have been lucky that you found support, but there are many NGOs like you would have come in contact with who are struggling to raise funds or raise support. So how do you see this situation? Like your analysis on this?
I agree, funding is a big problem. We have also faced this problem, and we are still facing the problems after, as I said, we've catered to these people for last 2 months. We've been working day in, day out for this, and even we feel at times that we are running short of funds. But then some kind person comes and, we get a donation. So I think your work speaks for yourself. I agree, because there are actually a lot of NGOs who are not doing a genuine work, and that is why the credibility of the NGOs, it doesn't sound very good. But then if you are working properly, your technology, I think, is a big medium to do it. So work speaks for itself. If you are doing a genuine work, there'll be a lot many people who are ready to give. So one is this: you should be very, very honest in your work, whatever you're doing. Collaborate with the other NGOs who are working well. As I have mentioned earlier, there were some fund-starved NGOs whom we reached out to, and that is how this collaboration happened, because we have to ultimately pool in our resources and experience to come to a common thing. And then, yes, crowdfunding is one good thing what has come out, because it has sensitized the middle income group of Indians towards the way they can contribute towards social cause. So it is not only about CSR funding or the government fund, but I think it is the average Indian citizen who has come forward in this pandemic. So this is a very, very positive step in terms of funding.
Very interesting. And how do you keep your funders informed about the work you are doing? Like if someone has given you funds and people expect that they at least have enough.
Yes.
So how do you do
we have always made sure about whatever we are doing, one, the social media thing is very important that we always project our work over there. But the people who are funding us in the form of CSR donations, yes, we probably have a proper database of things. If we are distributing n number of food kits in a particular area, when was that done? How many kits were done? And then several pictures. So we have compiled the entire data, and the amount of funds which were donated by a particular group. We send them a detailed report about the work done, how the funds have been utilized for the relief initiative. So we always make sure, because that inspires the confidence of your donor in your work. So we've always made it a point, not only now, but even from our earlier initiatives, what we've been doing for past 3 years, we always make sure that credible data is given to them after doing this much of work.
Sure. And has your NGO also sometimes collaborated with the government? Because the sectors you are working in, health and education, government is a very important player in these sectors. So, your like any collaborations you have done with the government yet in these departments?
So we don't have a formal project with any state government, but being in the government services, we have several of our people, in the IAS and many juniors or friends who have actually listed out the requirements in their areas and given us the list and given us the administrative support to carry out the programs. For example, I would like to tell about this initiative of solar lanterns, what we did in Kolipura. We did with the help of the local administration there. So that it becomes administratively very easier for us, because they can identify the beneficiaries and avoid duplication in our work, because they have the entire database. So yes, administratively, we have been working with the government. No formal projects as such, but we would like to take it up in future, because now we have quite a lot of experience behind us to take up responsibly any government project. Similarly, in Dahanu also, where we are working, which is a tribal area in Maharashtra, there also we tied up with the government in identifying the targeted beneficiaries and the list of requirements, and then we cater to those requirements.
And some people have raised some questions in the Q&A, and I will take up some of the select ones because some of you some of the questions you have already answered. So there is a question that what has inspired you to keep going on, especially in the challenging times? Like in these times, running these projects has not been easy, as I can understand. So what has kept you motivated? If you can talk about that.
Okay, so this has been going on for last 3-4 years, and right now it's much bigger. I think whenever we have taken up any project like this, there was one common thing, and what kept us motivated was that what if we are just happily settled in our comfortable jobs and thinking that someone somewhere is taking care of it. I don't think so. That has been our area. That is the way we've been thinking. We thought that with whatever resources we have, in the best possible manner, if we are able to bring even a small change in somebody's life, that will keep us motivated for much greater works. And as I told you, these 3 or 4 stories of COVID, there are innumerable stories what we have encountered, and seeing those people smile and seeing the impact of the very little work what we are doing, it just keeps us motivated. I mean, you don't have to tell anybody, you don't have to wait for anybody to tell you that you have to do something. It just comes from within. You don't have to be a superhero to do anything. You just have to be brave enough to care for people. So that element of caring for people and reaching out to them, that keeps us motivated.
Sure. And I want to ask you about, you have mentioned about the impact of your work in the COVID-19 situation. You have mentioned about the story in the COVID-19. If you can also talk about some of the non-COVID work, which you had already mentioned about Uttarakhand, Rajasthan, and Maharashtra. If you can talk about the impact it has, how it has impacted the life of the rural citizen there. Any stories to tell about that? Either in Uttarakhand or Rajasthan or in Maharashtra, anything?
Yeah. So I would tell you one of the most touching stories over this Kolipur only, what I was telling of the solar lanterns. And these were the families, these were 65 families who had been living for generations in this small village in Rajasthan. And they had never seen light because it was a forest area, and they were asked to translocate from that area by the government, but somehow the compensation didn't seem to be quite enough for them. So they refused. But then at the same time, the government refused to bring light or refused to get them water connections. So they have been surviving like this. So this was Diwali last year. And when we thought that we are lighting diyas and there is light in everybody's lives, these are the people who have never ever seen light beyond 7 p.m. in their lives. So we elected, and I went along with my mom, dad to this place, Kolipura in Rajasthan. And when we gave these solar lanterns, we made it a point to give it only to the women. I feel women are more responsible. So we gave it to all the women in the families. And there was this lady who came to me, and then she just blessed me, saying that for the first time in her life, she will cook dinner with light in her house. She has never ever done this. She was, blowing that kerosene lamp, which was hurting her lungs. She had developed a bad throat because of that. So she said, this is the first time anybody has thought about it. I mean, we have been living in these villages for years, but then nobody came to us, and you came to us. So that was one very, very touching story. Then in the last winters, we were told it was very bad at Kota. The weather was really bad. And then the principals told us that these are the kids in these few schools in around about 14 schools in nearby the villages of Kota, where they said that these are the kids or the daily wagers, and the parents, they go to the city, they earn, they may or may not get those 100 rupees in a day. And they said the students normally, they miss out on their schools then at a peak winter because they don't have woolen garments. So we reached out to them with this simple thing. We just gave them sweaters, around 1,700 kids. But that ensured their attendance during the winters months in Kota. So that was a big change for them. And it was surprising for us to see that that was the only woolen garment what these kids were having. So it was again very touching, but at least we ensured that by this small gesture of ours, we were able to ensure the student attendance. So because it is, as I said, it's all interlinked. Student will come to a school if you provide them these basic necessities. And that is how you develop the interest of a student in getting retained in the school and completing his formal education. So these were some kind of stories what we have been experiencing.
Very interesting stories and very touching, and just shows out that how much effort is still required in the rural areas of our country, which still need a lot more attention than they are right now getting from all of us. And tell us that you are living in Mumbai, and everyone talks about the hectic life of Mumbai, hectic urban life, and people say that they don't have time. So you are in a government job, and I think you would have your own 9 to 6 p.m. challenges of like the office work. So finding time and motivation, and besides, I think managing your family, like how do you balance your official duties and your family duties, and then finding time to think about people who are sitting in like somewhere in a rural area or somewhere in a distress situation. So how do you balance all this?
Yeah. So firstly, government job is not 9 to 6 anymore. I'm sure all my friends and people in government service would agree to me. There were times when we were in investigation, and for 24 hours, I was never in my house. So 9 to 6 concept of government working is obsolete now. So we are working much more than that, just like the private sector. And that's why I think we are delivering our targets very efficiently now. But as far as managing time is concerned, I think when we say that we don't have time, it's more of an attitude than a fact, because everybody has the same time, but still we see people excelling so much or doing so much, and otherwise a few people are there who are very complacent. So I don't think time is ever a problem if you have the will to do something. Spending time with my family, yes, I do that. My parents stay here and with me, and I spend quality time with them. But at the same time, NGO is, Samarpan is very, very close to my heart. And whenever we get time, we have, since we have a very detailed structure, and now more or less after working for 3 or 4 years, the entire program is established. So it's only about implementing. But still, I make sure that whenever we are implementing any program, I make sure when we talk about 41 schools, each of these 41 schools I have visited at least once. So that, unless you visit these places, you don't feel connected. You cannot experience the problem of what the person is having. And taking out time from my regular schedule to have these experiences, which have been very rewarding in my life, I think I will always take time for that, because they just enrich my life. I mean, I always believe that this is my story and this has to resonate with me. So finding out time is not at all a problem if you just want to do it with so much of passion of yours.
Fantastic. And there is a question by the audience. Lavi has asked that kudos to you and your team. We recently saw Akshay Kumar praise about your initiative on Twitter. Do you feel it will somewhere help in creating more awareness among the people?
Who has appreciated? I'm sorry, I didn't get you, Dr. Gupta.
Akshay Kumar has recently praised your work on Twitter. So
yeah,
there is a question by the audience that do you it will somewhere help in creating more awareness among the people?
Yes, definitely. I mean, all of us, when we are working, we look for influencers and celebrities like Akshay Kumar, who have a lot of credibility in their work, what they are doing. They are a major influencer on people. So that's why, his support to our project, especially the menstrual hygiene project, because he has already done a movie. Most of us have seen that movie, Padman, where he has projected a real time hero on the screen. So his support to us will definitely give us more credibility in terms of the work, what we are doing. And yes, after his tweet, we got quite a lot of donation on our campaign. So I think influencers, if they work in the right manner, they are just spreading our good work forward in a very, very positive way. So yes, it has definitely helped us.
And there's a question that what inspired you to shift from medical to civil services?
Okay, so medical civil services, I think civil services is a very, very amazing platform which gives you a lot of exposure to work. I was happy in my serving for the Indian Armed Forces veterans, but then I realized that the exposure was very limited in terms of the impact what you were making on the ground. So civil services give you that opportunity to serve a larger number of people. You are able to see the bigger picture, and hence the impact will be greater. So that's how this thing has been there. And I can say that in my experience of civil services, there are a lot many things what we've learned, and there have been so many opportunities to come out to serve the people, or to help in the current services and revenue augmentation and mobilization is what is our core job. And we realize the importance of this because revenue is the foundation for nation building. So ultimately, the efforts what you are putting, doing in civil services, specifically in the IRS, it goes to build up the nation for the infrastructure projects, for the welfare schemes. So it is a much, much larger impact. So I think the impact of the work what you create and the exposure what you get, that is the biggest motivation for anyone to join civil services.
Sure. And there is another question that some tips for the people who are willing, who are writing the UPSC exams, if you have any suggestions for them.
Okay, so my suggestion to people for UPSC exams would be, first thing is you have to work really hard. I mean, that is one thing which is there, what we call grit or passion or your perseverance. I think that counts more than anything in UPSC. It's a very grilling exam and it requires a lot of perseverance. So you have to fight till the end. It's not for a day, it's not for a single month, but then you just have to go on working for that. Be very aware of the things around you. There's a lot of material available now. I never took coaching, but then I think there are some good coaching institutes who can give you the right guidance. There is so much to study, but then be very, very selective and smart in studying whatever you are, because ultimately your answers, your presentation in the interview has to be different from the rest. there are so many people aspiring for the exam. How do you become different from the rest? Is by having a form, a very detailed, in-depth study from the text, and then translating that into an opinion of yours, which finally counts in the exam. But yes, hard work is the key to clearing the UPSC exam. You have to persevere, whatever difficulties you face. There may be times when you feel really depressed, when you feel that parents are not understanding, somebody's excelling more than you. I think these are the things what should be left behind, and the only thing should be a single-minded focus towards the exam. That is what will make the difference.
And there are some of the questions where people have asked that how we can associate with Samarpan, how we can associate with your work. So some people have asked on this Q&A. Yeah.
It will be great if people associate with us. I'll be more than thankful to the people who come and join us. So we have already shared our Twitter handle. I'm sure it is shared. I will request my team members, if they have joined in, they will share this. We have our campaigns. Please drop in us a mail. I've already shared my email ID. I'll share it again if you want, because that is where you can just drop in a mail and reach out to us. I'll be very, very grateful in case you can collaborate with us. And
Please,
yeah.
So
just drop in a mail. You're just a mail away. So please.
Excellent. And in the end, I think Dr. Megha, the initiative you and your sister have started, I think Ruma Bhargav, is a great initiative, and I think it's a very inspiring initiative. In fact, I personally got inspired listening to you, the kind of work you and your sister are doing. Hats off to you. And we at AILETS have been contributing in a small way at this stage in the times of Corona by engaging with people like you all over the country who are doing some good work in these challenging times, and so that this becomes a inspiration for others to help the poor in these situations. So your views and suggestions about our work at AILETS, Dr. Megha, if you have any inputs and suggestions for Team AILETS in the work which we are doing of spreading awareness about innovations in governance and helping in these times of COVID-19. Megha ji.
I saw several of your seminars which your team had shared with me, and I should compliment you for sharing the positive stories, the good stories. I think you are doing a wonderful job, because as I've mentioned earlier also in the webinar, that media is a very important influencer to spread the word of the positive stories, because it actually inspires people to be a part of this social change. So you please continue with your good work. And at the same time, if you can actually catch the stories on ground, I mean, I am narrating you the stories, but if your crew members can actually cover a story on ground, I think that will also be one of the major things, so that people can witness what is happening on the ground right now.
Yes, I think people are still asking for your the Twitter handle and the Facebook page of. So I have written here. So I am informing all the audience that the Facebook page of the Samarpan has been written here on the chat, and also the Twitter handle. So I think
okay, it's already written.
The Ruma is actually writing it to all the family.
Ruma is there, she's writing it. I'm sure,
but, like it's like written, it's like only visible to us, not.
It's visible to all the panelists, it says. If you can just type Dr. Gupta, I think that will be fine. Copy it and type in your chat box.
Yes, and just so I have.
That is the Twitter handle, the Samarpan ORG.
Yes. So I
and the Facebook handle as well.
Like this work of Dr. Megha and Dr. Ruma, that this Twitter handles, Facebook handles, all are here. Email ID is also given. So if any of you want to associate with them, please mail them or message them on the social handles. And lastly, Dr. Megha, I want to ask you that these, if you can inform all the audience that if the type of successes you have had in like some of the states and they want to locally initiate, is your team able to mentor them or guide them also? Like maybe some of them are not able to donate financially, but if they are interested to help the COVID-19 uh, uh, patients or the victims, and so like can your NGO support and guide them also?
Definitely. It would be a pleasure of ours to guide people who actually want to do the good work. So as you have already mentioned our to social media handles and our email, I request anybody who wants to come with us, who wants to collaborate with us, or they want any kind of help from us, please drop in a message on any of these social media handles or on our email, and we will reach out to you ourselves. Because I think positive difference can be created only if all of us come together.
So I think we will end this interaction here, and hats off to Dr. Megha Bhargav and Dr. Ruma for taking this amazing initiative of Samarpan and helping the poor and distressed people in these challenging times. And I request all the audience that if you have liked the work which Samarpan is doing, please like and share this video so that the good work they are doing reaches out to a lot more people, and a lot more people get inspired by this amazing work. So with this, namaskar, Dr. Megha ji. Dhanyawad, bahut bahut.
Thank you, Dr. Gupta. Thank you for having me here. And thank you to all the participants for a very, very patient listening. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.